Well, good evening or good morning, depending where you are. It's morning here in Australia where I am, and you may be watching most likely from the United States or wherever you are in the world. Shalom. Hope everything is going well for you. Welcome to the Ancient Foundation Bible Fellowship. My name is Shannon, and along with my wife Lyndall, we are part of Ancient Foundation Bible Fellowship in a city called Port Macquarie, New South Wales, Australia. It is another beautiful day here. It is in the middle of winter, and it was just a glorious weather we're having at the moment. So as our name says, we are a fellowship who have gone back to the ancient foundations of our faith. Good morning, Bronya. Shalom. Nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. So we've gone back to the foundations of our faith, and we have decided to build our house on the rock. And as we know, that rock is Yeshua, and he is the word that was from the beginning. So we have decided that we're going to live our lives and build our house on that rock. And if you haven't been with us before in these shows and these broadcasts, we'll be discussing a wide variety of topics with a focus on Hebrew language and culture. Why? Because this is the context our Bibles were written in. So I think it's very important to understand the language and the culture of our Bibles to more accurately understand what it is trying to communicate to us, what it's trying to teach us. I think that's a good idea. So again, I'd encourage you to write comments or anything in the chat box. I look forward to hearing from you and conversing with you. I like to be interactive, and if you feel free to write comments or anything in the chat box. So with that being said, today we're going to be talking about being called. But before we do, I just want to bring up our website in case you want to find out a little bit more about us, which is on the bottom of the page there, www.ancientfoundationbiblefellowship.com. I'll just leave that up for a short while, and if you're interested, I encourage you to go and have a look and check us out. So today we're going to be talking about being called. And if you haven't joined us before, what I like to do is I like to share my screen with you, which is I'm just doing that now. Just bear with me for a second as I bring up my screen so you can see some scriptures. There we go. So I like to share my screen with you so you can follow along with all the different scripture verses. And if later on you can go back and watch the recording of this teaching and go through the scriptures yourself and go from there. So I like to share that with you. So like I said, today we're talking about being called. If you're with us today, give us a shout out in the chat box. Say hello. Like to see who you are, and thank you again for joining us. So we're talking about being called. So I'd like to start off with, if you look to your screens with me. Oh, there we go. That's better. Leviticus 1:1. Now, this is a really important concept from a Hebraic perspective, is being called. Leviticus 1:1, it says, "Now Yahweh called Moses and spoke to him from the table of meeting, saying. So in this particular verse, we can see the word called. Now, Yahweh called Moshe. He called him. Now, you may or may not be aware that the English word Leviticus, as this is the first verse in Leviticus, the book of Leviticus, the English word Leviticus comes from Latin. It's not Hebrew, and it's not even Greek. It comes from Latin and literally means the book of the Levites in Latin. But the Hebrew word, again, if you look to your screen with me, the Hebrew word for this book is Vayikra. This is the Hebrew word for the book of Leviticus. It's Vayikra, and it means, and he called. And he called. So that's what it means in Hebrew. Yahweh called Moshe. As we just read out in Leviticus 1:1, Yahweh called out to Moshe. Yahweh knew Moses. He knew Moses. In this context, though, this goes beyond just calling out to somebody. When Yahweh called Moshe, this goes beyond just calling out, saying, hey, you, whatever your name is. This goes far beyond in this context, more than just calling out to somebody. In the context, this reveals a relationship. As we know, Yahweh desires to have a relationship with us. He desires to have a relationship with his people. Moshe had a relationship with Yahweh. Yahweh had a relationship with Moshe and Aaron. Yahweh called Moses into the tabernacle, into his house. What does the tabernacle represent? Well, it represents many things. For example, this is where the sacrifices were done. This is where atonement was made. This is where people drew near to Yahweh by ministering to him and serving him with their offerings. Now, I've talked a lot in the past about the connection to the sacrifices, to the act of drawing near to God, and we'll do a teaching in sometime in the future about drawing near to God and how we can learn a lot from the sacrificial system in Leviticus. But this is a place, the tabernacle was a place where they drew near by ministering and serving with their offerings to Yahweh. This is where their offerings went up like a sweet smelling aroma to Yahweh. This is where also the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat are located, in the tabernacle. But ultimately, it speaks of Yahweh's presence. The tabernacle represented the Yahweh's presence in the midst of the people, in the midst of the camp, right in the middle. The tabernacle represented Yahweh's presence. His cloud, his presence dwelt there. And many call it the Shekinah of God, or the Shekinah of God, which is the glory of Yahweh. It dwelt there. The cloud and his presence and his glory dwelt in the tabernacle. So the tabernacle represents all these things and much more. And this is where Yahweh called to Moses from. Come into my presence. Come in and tabernacle with me. Come in and have relationship with me. So you can get the idea. It's just so much more than when we read in our Bibles that Yahweh called Moses. No, there's so much more meaning behind that. It means that he wanted relationship. He wanted to to speak with him. He wanted to abide with him and have relationship with him. Yahweh called Moses into his presence. He called him into the tabernacle, into his house. Think about this, the creator. Just think about this for a moment. The creator of the universe, the almighty, the all-powerful, all-knowing, all present, called out to Moses. Then Moses went in, as he often did, to his presence. And Yahweh spoke and communicated with him. I mean, this is just amazing. When you sit down and think on this for a moment, God, Yahweh, Elohim, creator of the heavens and the earth, who was from the beginning, before the beginning, called out and wanted to communicate and have a relationship with Moses as he does with us. This is amazing. Yahweh also calls to us to regularly enter. We can do that because of Yeshua HaMashiach, when his blood was spilled for us, that we can enter in to the very same presence. Yahweh calls us to regularly to enter into his presence. He wants to talk to us. Oh, but brother, I'm not worthy. You don't know what I've done. You don't know who I am. He does. Yahweh does. And he says that his grace and his mercy is sufficient every day. And is anew every day. He's calling you. He wants you to have a relationship with him. He wants you to enter in to his presence regularly. He wants to communicate with you. He wants to communicate with us. He wants a relationship with us. He wants to have a relationship with you, and he wants to have a relationship with me. Yahweh calls to us regularly. I want to go into this word call. And it's just such a beautiful, powerful word. So again, if you look to your screens with me. So there on your screen, we see the word for the book of Leviticus, which is Vayikra. So then the Hebrew root word for the word called here is Kara. So you can see the same letters there as in Vayikra above. The Hebrew root word for word, the Hebrew root for the word called here is Kara. And this means to call, to cry, to utter a loud sound, a call to someone, a cry for help, to call one's name, to summon, to proclaim, and also to invite. So these are all the different meanings and the way that this word is translated in our Bibles, all these different ways. But sometimes what I like to do is to go into the pictograph of the language as it tells the story. It gives the meaning behind the word. So here's the pictograph of this same word, kara. And here we have the kuf, the resh, and the aleph. We're reading from right to left. And the kuf here is a picture of the sun on the horizon. And it's where the gathering of the light happens. You can see when the sun rises and when the sun sets. You see this gathering of light where it's getting brighter in the morning and where it's dissipating in the evening. So Kuf represents a picture of the sun on the horizon and a gathering of light, a gathering of light. The Resh is a picture of the head of a man, which is quite obvious with the pictograph there. And the Aleph is a picture of an ox head, representing strength, authority, and a chief or a leader. So when we combine all these meanings together, we get a meaning of what kara means. So combine these mean the gathering of a man or men or people to the authority or the chief. Remember, we're talking about being called here. When Yahweh calls, it's the gathering of men and women or people to the authority or to the chief, which is obviously Elohim or Yahweh. This is why I love the Hebrew language. It's just so beautiful and gives so much meaning to our Bibles. I don't think in English, called doesn't convey this meaning. We just read in Yahweh called Moses. But the Hebrew means he wanted to gather together with Moses and that he's the chief and the leader. And he wants to communicate with him. The root kara has the following meanings, meaning a calling together for assembling, whether that is in the singular or the plural. So it's the calling together for an assembly, whether that is singular or plural. So in our context that we just read, Yahweh called to Moses. He wanted to meet with him in the singular. But as we know, there are many times when Yahweh calls to the nation or to the peoples, and that's obviously in the plural. It also means to call, as in to call out, to call a name, or even give a name. And it also means to meet, which means to come together to meet. It's pretty straightforward. And it also means to read. This root word kara also means to read, as in to read a scroll. Remember, we're talking about culture here. To read a scroll in the presence of those called to a meeting. So if you can picture back in the ancient times when they're in their synagogues and they rolled out their scrolls and they read from the scroll, that is the same meaning, because they were reading to the gathering. They obviously gathered into the synagogues every Sabbath. So it's the reading of a scroll in the presence of those who are called to that meeting. If you look to your screens with me again, a derivative of the root kara is mikra. So Hebrew words have like families. There's groups of words that belong to the same root, which is a derivative. And one of the derivatives of the root kara is mikra, which is simply adding the letter mem to the front of the root kara, and this is mikra. And this word mikra literally means a calling together to meet. A calling together to meet. Mikra is the calling together to meet. We'll touch on this a little bit later. So in our Bibles, this word mikra is directly connected to the feast of Yahweh. And in our Bibles, they are commonly translated as a holy convocation. So when we read in our Bibles, a holy convocation, it is the word that the English, that's the English, the holy convocation, but the Hebrew behind that word is mikra. And we understand that these holy convocations are also the Sabbaths, which is the weekly Sabbaths, and also the annual feast, because we know that the feasts are also Sabbaths. Some call them high Sabbaths. These are the holy convocations. These are the calling to meet together to a certain place. The feast and the Sabbaths of Yahweh. Why? Because these are the times Yahweh calls to his people to assemble and gather together for his appointed times. And he is the authority and the leader. So we get this picture now of the pictograph when Yahweh calls to gather together for his appointed times, because he is the leader and the authority, which all men, women, and peoples are called to gather to. Amazing, isn't it? In gaining an understanding of the meaning of this Hebrew word, one sees there is much more than just Yahweh called to Moses and said. There's so much more depth and meaning now. That when Yahweh called out to Moses in Leviticus 1:1, it was for a reason. It was to assemble together with him. It was to communicate with him. So now I want to move on to the New Testament. And if you look to your screens with me again, a Greek word for call or called is kaleo. Kaleo. And it also means to call by name, be called by someone, also the name of a place, for example, a mountain or a city. As we know in ancient times, especially in Hebrew, mountains, cities, rivers, geographical locations were called because of a significant thing that happened there, or it represented something, or it looked like something. This is how they named and called their places in those days. So again, the Greek word is kaleo. And this is very similar to the Hebrew word kara, which we just discussed. So let's have a look at some examples of this word kaleo in the New Testament. In the complete Jewish Bible, in Matthew 1:21, it says, she will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Yeshua, which means Adonai saves, or God saves, because he will save his people from their sins. So obviously here, Adonai here is Yahweh. Also where it says in this particular verse, you are to name him Yeshua, most other translations say you are to call him. And this is this word kaleo. And this would also be the Hebrew word kara. You are to call him Yeshua. Again, if you look to your screens, it's Romans 8:30. Moreover, whom he predestined, these he also called. Whom he called, these he also justified. And whom he justified, these he also glorified. So here again we see this word kaleo. He called. Those he predestined, he called. This is the same. Yahweh called out. And it's more than just calling out. It's for a reason. It's for a relationship. It's for communicating. He called. Kaleo in the Greek. Again, another example in Romans 9:24-26. Even us, who he called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. As he says also in Hosea, I will call them my people who were not my people, and her beloved who was not beloved. And it shall come to pass, in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they shall be called sons of the living God. I mean, what a wonderful promise. In the context of what we're talking about, Yahweh's calling out. He called out to us, not only of the Jews, but also of the Gentiles. And he says, I will call them to be my people who are not my people. And it shall come to pass that they will be called sons of the living God. I mean, what an exciting verse. What an exciting promise for you and I. We are called sons, children of the living God, men and women of the living God. The God of the universe, the creator, has called out to us and wants to communicate with us and have a relationship with us. He wants to protect us and bless us and watch over us, go before us and be beside us and be behind us. This is an awesome promise that Yahweh has called out to us. Kaleo in the Greek. Another example, 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. I mean, we're the chosen people. We are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, who called us. He called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. This is his same kaleo. He's called us out for relationship again, for communication, to watch over us, to bless us. What an amazing God who has called out to us that we serve. Follow me with on this passage, Matthew 22, 1-10. Hopefully this parable will be seen in a slightly different light now that we're understanding the power behind the word being called. Matthew 22, 1-10. And Yeshua answered and spoke to them again by parables. Now this is a parable. It's a story trying to explain a point. It is a parable. So he spoke to them again by parables and said, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, and they were not willing to come. Again, he sent out other servants saying, tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding. But they made light of it and went their own ways. One to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. Verse 7. But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up the city. Then he said to his servants, the wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore, go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together. See, here's this word, mikra. Gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. So here we see this powerful concept of the importance of being called by Yahweh, the importance of responding to that call when he does call. And like I said earlier, he calls to us regularly. Do we respond? Do we enter into his presence? Do we lay aside what we're doing at the time to go and spend time with him? He calls out to us regularly. I'm reminded there's some occasions when Moses called out to different peoples and they didn't come. They didn't respond, and bad things happened. We find this all through scriptures. It's so important to listen and to hear the call. And to hear that call means to respond to him when he wants to gather together with you. Again, look at your screens with me. Revelation chapter 19, verse 9. Then he said to me, write, blessed are those who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, these are the true sayings of God. So again, this is directly relating to what we just read out, the parable about the marriage supper, the wedding. And it says here, blessed are those who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. I mean, what a wonderful promise for us as believers that we have heard that call and we're responding to that call. Another Greek word I want to share with you relating to being called is kletos or kletos. Kletos, and it means called and invited. So it's similar to the last Greek word that we read out, which was kaleo. This word kletos means called and invited. Let's have a look at a couple of examples of this word in our New Testaments. In Matthew 22:14, it says, for many are called, but few are chosen. Now, there are many out there that believe that this should be read, for many are called, but few choose. Few choose back. Few respond to that call. And that's probably a more accurate reading of this verse, because we see that Yahweh calls many. Many are called. Yeshua calls many. The Holy Spirit calls out to many. But few choose back. Few respond to that call. Leviticus 23 verse 2. And it says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, these are my feast. So in this verse, we see all these different words combined together. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Remember, holy convocations is that word mikra, which is connected to kara, which is the calling, the inviting, the calling out for the gathering together. And his feast, which is also the time of gathering. But what I want to bring out is in this particular verse, kletos is in the Septuagint. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. So in this verse, kletos in the Septuagint is rendered mikra, which is the holy convocation. So the holy convocation here in this instance is kletos, the Greek word, to be called, to be invited to the holy convocation. Or the calling assembly, of the gathering together. So all these terms are connected and for the same purpose and for the same reason. Again, look to your screens, sticking to the word kletos, Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose. Those who are invited, those who are called out and respond according to his purpose. All things work together for good. What did Yeshua say in John 14? If you love me, keep my commandments. It says here, we know all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who follow his commandments, to those who gather together for his assemblies at his appointed times. Amazing how it all just fits together. To those who are called according to his purpose. So we should be reading this verse in light of being obedient, keeping his Sabbaths, his appointed times, his feast, his commandments. These were never done away with. Look to your screens again with me. Revelation 17, verse 14. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. So here we are. We have this word kletos here. Those who are with him are kletos, called and invited and chosen and faithful. How awesome is that? The Lamb will overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those who are with him. Those are the ones who are called. Those are the ones who have responded and said, yes, I will follow. I will meet with you. I will be faithful to your commandments. I will be faithful to your holy convocations and gathering together. They will be with him. See, now we understanding all these different verses in such a fuller way by learning some of these key words. Called and chosen and faithful will be those who are with him. How good's that? Again, look to your screens with me. 1 Corinthians 1 Corinthians 1, 24 to 28. Again, it said we're talking about the word kletos, but to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. So put that in the context of the smartest men on earth today and the leaders of our countries and prime ministers and presidents and politicians. The foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. I want to be beside the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, not beside any man. Verse 26, for you see your calling, brethren, that not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. That's a scary verse. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to the shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty. And the base things of the world and the things which are despised, God has chosen. And the things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are. I mean, this is just amazing. I'm just reminded as we speak about these things that when Yeshua called the disciples, now in the culture at the time, some of them were fishermen. They were the base things of the world. They weren't religious, educated people. They weren't religious, educated people. They were the tradesmen of the day. They weren't the smart ones. And Yeshua called these people to make foolish the wise of the day, to make foolish the priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees of the day. How awesome is that? You don't have to be an academic. You don't have to have degrees and letters after your name. And he used those people who responded to the call. Remember the two disciples and their father was Zebedee, and they dropped their nets and followed him. They responded. Many are chosen, but few choose back. And they chose back. And then these very same people were used to show the wise of the world how foolish they really are. So again, in this particular passage, we see Paul using the word called and what that means. How good is it understanding these things? Shalom, Penny. Thank you for joining us. Nice to have you with us. I hope you're enjoying this discussion and teaching today. Bless you. There is another word that some of us may be familiar with, or I guess most of us would be familiar with, that is also connected to being called. And if you look to your screens with me, look, the English word church in Greek is ekklesia or ecclesia, however you choose to pronounce it. Ecclesia or ecclesia, and it also means called out. So we see this connected to being called. So called out or called forth, a gathering of people. Called out or called forth, a gathering of people. This is another Greek word. But in the Greek mindset, it is a gathering of any group of people for any cause. Not only believers that are gathering for a meeting, but it's a gathering of citizens called out from their homes into some public place. It is any gathering of people. So in the Greek mindset and in the Greek culture, this word is not just a religious, it's not just, we use it today as ecclesia, which is in a church sense, but at the time it was so broad, it was any gathering of people in a public place. They were called out from their homes to meet together, to gather together. They were called out. This is what it means to be called out or called forth. So it's like, let me use today's terminology. It may be people going to watch a football game or a sports event or go to a concert or go to a political rally. These are gatherings of people. These are ecclesia of people that have been called out and gone out from their homes to a public place for a gathering, for an assembly together, for whatever reason that may be. It wasn't just in the sense of a religious setting. It was for any setting in the culture. Whereas we'll do this at another time, but when you use the Hebrew word for an assembly, it was always to do with meeting with Yahweh. And this is where we get our word church from, but we'll go into that another time. So like we said, that this ecclesia was a gathering of any purpose, any reason of citizens. They were called out from their homes into a public place. God has called each one of us. So I'm assuming that most people watching or listening to me have heard that call. We've already heard that call, that you are gathering together and assembling at his appointed times, at his holy convocations, his weekly Sabbaths, and annual feast. Just like Leviticus chapter 23 teaches when and what those appointed times are. If you are not, or hearing this for the very first time, I urge you with everything that is in me to search out and educate yourself with Yahweh's appointed times. You may be watching this and you may pass this link on or pass this teaching on to somebody that you're talking to. If you're that person, I encourage you with everything in me, learn about Yahweh's appointed times in Leviticus 23. Why do I say that? Because in Malachi 3:16 it says that I am Yahweh, and I do not change. And in Hebrews 13, verse 8, Yeshua himself says, Jesus himself says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. So these things haven't changed. These things have not been done away with. Yahweh's appointed times are for us. We read earlier in Leviticus 23, verse 2, it says, and these are the feasts of Yahweh. That is key. That is a key phrase. These are the feast of Yahweh. They're not Jewish. People think they're Jewish because the Jews do them. These are the feast of Yahweh. And those who are called by him, which are Jews and Gentiles, we read through Romans earlier, those who are called by him, those who respond to that call, should meet with Yahweh at those appointed times, at those appointed feasts. They haven't changed. They haven't been done away with. His weekly Sabbaths are still an appointed time. His annual feasts are still an appointed time. This is how he calls. This is how he calls out to those who are called by his name. And it's up to us to respond and to assemble together and to gather together at that appointed place and at that appointed time. So he can communicate with us. So he can have a relationship with us. Many people walk around saying, I'm called by Yahweh. Really? Yahweh has a plan and a purpose for your life. He has called you for a reason. If you have heard the call of Yahweh, that is for a reason. The fact that you are among us today is divinely inspired. The fact that you're here listening today is divinely inspired. And if you listen to this at some time in the future, you're listening it for a reason. You're listening to this for a reason. God has a purpose and a plan for your life. He's calling out to you. Will you respond? I'm talking to believers just as much as non-believers. He called you and you responded to even be here today. There was something inside of you that inspired you to search out his truths. That's why you're here right now. Because in the past somewhere, he called you and something happened in your heart where you wanted to explore and search out his truths, search out what his word really means. And for that reason, that's why you're here today. Because you're wanting to learn. You're wanting to draw nearer to him. You're wanting to seek out and find his truth. So he inspired you to search his truths out. He awakened you. He opened your eyes and your ears to hear and see his ways. Again, look to your screens with me. Jeremiah 29, 11 to 13. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says Yahweh. Thoughts of peace and not evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and go up. Then you will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen. So here we got a reverse thing going on. It's us calling out to him, and he will listen. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with your whole heart. When you search with me with all your heart. So here we are, we're calling out to Yahweh. We're calling out to him. We want to communicate with him and respond to him. And we want him to respond to us. And he says that when we do that, that he will listen. When we seek him, when we lay down what we want to do and seek him, go into that presence, go into that tabernacle, we will find him when we search with him with all our hearts. John 15:16-19. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatever you ask in my name, he may give you. These things I command you. These things I command you, that you love one another. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. So here we see that he chose us. He called out to us. He has appointed us that we should go and bear fruit, and that our fruit should remain. And then whatever we ask in Yeshua's name, he will give to us. So Yahweh's chosen you. He's called out to you. Being called of God, which everyone here is, does not only mean you're forgiven, does not only mean that you're redeemed, and it doesn't not only mean that you're saved. It means that he wants us to be active, to be a testimony and a witness for him. The assemblies of believers are called out for a reason. He is called out for a reason. He's called you, he intercepted your life whenever that was, for a reason, for a purpose. Yahweh has a calling on each and everyone within the body, and it's all for his glory and his name's sake, to bear witness and to be a testimony on the earth. See, you live where you live. Now, it's more likely than not that I'm not going to be able to reach the people within your circle. But you can. You can have an influence on people that are around you. Yahweh has called you for a reason and for a purpose. Everyone needs to pray and ask Yahweh what that purpose is, what his will is for your life. You were called for such a time as this, for a reason. You were born in this day and hour. You are living and breathing in this day and hour for a reason. We are here to help and support each other in finding that purpose. Yahweh has gifts that he supplies to each one that asks. And this is all done within the body. The fellowship of believers to encourage, edify, and support the believers. Also, we are called to be a testimony for him in the world that we live in. We are called, listen, we are called to be a testimony for the world that we live in. Now more than ever, do we need to be a witness? Do we need to be that light in our world? We are called to be different. If you walk this way for any length of time, we are called to be different. We are different. We are different from everyone else. Especially if you're one that keeps the weekly Sabbath and his annual feast and eat clean foods. We're different. We are called to be different. We are called to be set apart, to be holy. We're called to be set apart from everyone else, to be holy, to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation, to be set apart people that do his ways and his will. We are to be in the world, but not of it. We are to help and show others that Yahweh also has a plan and a purpose for them also. See, in a fellowship here that I'm involved with, that I'm a part of here in Port Macquarie, we are to help and show others what their calling and what their purpose is within the body. And know this, we are called to be a part of a body. We need to be part of the body somewhere, somehow. And then help them discover Yahweh's plan and purpose also for their lives. Again, look at your screens with me. James 4:8. It says, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. When Yahweh calls and we respond, he draws near to us. He calls us in many ways. He calls in many ways. See, when Yahweh calls out to you, I want to go back to Leviticus 1:1 when the Lord called Moses and Moses responded. When Moses responded, he went into the tabernacle. He went into the very presence of Yahweh, the creator of the universe. And when you respond to Yahweh's call, he draws near to you. He draws near to you. He calls in many ways, but mainly to us as his people, it is for his Sabbaths, for the feast. It is in the gathering together, the assembling together, the holy convocation that he calls. And I know that at those times he speaks to people because it's an appointed time. It's a time to meet with him. Also on a personal level, when you pray and read his word, he speaks to you. He guides you. He speaks to you and he guides you. And when you do this, when you continually lay your plans and desires before him, he meets with you. He reveals to you his way. So we need to be a people that pray. We need to be a people that read his word continually. We need to be a people that enter the tabernacle. We need to be a people that enter his presence. And this responding to his call is an ongoing process. It's continual. It's not, I responded and got saved, and that's it. No, Yahweh wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to build a relationship with you. He wants to communicate with you regularly. We see Moshe went into the tabernacle regularly. We see Moshe move into his presence regularly. Now we know it was in the tabernacle, but before that it was up on the mountain. He went up and down the mountain. Yahweh called him up to the mountain. It took effort for Moses to get into his presence. I don't think that going up and down that mountain was easy. He would have been a fit man. But it took effort for him to climb that mountain to get into his presence. Sometimes it takes effort for us to get into his presence. Sometimes it requires us to lay down watching something on TV or doing something else, reading a novel or reading a book, to reading his word, to praying. Yahweh's calling you today. He's calling you every day. It's a continually ongoing presence. I encourage you, I'm speaking to myself as well, to go into the tent, to go into his house, enter his presence, and see what he has to say. Many people say, I don't know what Yahweh's will is. I don't know what his plan or purpose is for my life. Well, have you been into the tent? Have you been into his presence? Have you been communicating with him? Have you been spending time with him? Again, I encourage you to go into the tent, to go into his house, enter his presence to see what he has to say. Respond to his call, for he has called you and he is calling you. And I like this last picture. You are called for such a time as this. Friend, you have a purpose and a plan on your life. Enter his presence. Enter the tent to find out what that plan and purpose is, and then be active in doing it. You are called for such a time as this. I'm glad you enjoyed that, Bronya. Yes, sometimes we need to climb mountains to meet with our King. That's so true. Just finish on this. This is our email address, ancientfoundationbf@gmail.com. I encourage you to reach out to us and communicate with us if we can help you in any way. We'll do the best that we can. ancientfoundationbf@gmail.com. Again, I'll just put up our website down the bottom if you want to find out more about us and who we are. www.ancientfoundationbiblefellowship.com. So again, I just want to encourage you, hear his call, respond to his call, and then be continually active in that calling, being a witness for him and for his name. I hope you enjoyed this teaching today on being called and called out. I hope that you can see the depth of the language and the culture our Bibles were written in. And I also hope and pray that through today's teaching and understanding that somehow you've drawn that little bit closer to our Father, to Yahweh. So with that being said, I would like to thank Mark David Smith and the team at Messianic Lamb Network for the opportunity to be able to share with you. I encourage you to tune into the Messianic Lamb Network throughout the week and listen to the many other teachings and ministries that are available there throughout the week. I hope this teaching has been a blessing to you and an encouragement to you. I thank you for watching and listening, and until next time, may Yahweh's hand be upon you, and may Yahweh watch over you and protect you and your loved ones. So until next time, blessings and shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.